Canon EOS R5. My review on the Canon EOS R5. I have used this camera now for more than 10 days and I'm reviewing this camera as a photographer and not a videographer. About myself, I'm a wedding and portrait photographer from Melbourne, Australia, and I am passionate about my business. I am a Canon master in Australia, but for me it is more important to have the right equipment for my clients. Canon does not endorse me to review this camera. This review is from my heart and the way I feel about the camera. I moved from the Canon EOS 5D Mark IV, which is a DSLR, to EOS R a couple of years ago, because I'm a big fan of mirrorless cameras. I've played and tested most of the other brands, but was quite satisfied with the Canon EOS R. The reason I love the Canon EOS R was compatibility with hundreds of Canon EF lenses. And of course, because of the amazing Canon RF lenses. And here's other reasons why I love the Canon EOS R cameras, all the different models. Same menu function like the previous Canon camera. Canon has the best menu system. The rotating LCD screen, I can hold it up, I can hold it down, I can hold it on the side, and I can view what I'm shooting. It's all touch controlled. I can change anything, any setting on it, and I can touch focus it. So it's perfect. I hold the camera away from my face, talk to the subject, and focus where I want it to be, and perfect, I take the picture. Now I can communicate better with my subject. I don't need to hide behind the camera. That's old story, that's old times. And let's not forget the high quality out of camera images. Before reviewing the camera for photography, let me quickly talk about the video capture. I use the video features of the camera only for personal projects. This camera's strength is for photography, with some fantastic bonus video features. This camera does everything that Canon announced. 8K 30p video for approximately 20 minutes, 4K 120p video for approximately 15 minutes. It has a warning sign when the camera gets hot and turns off automatically. For the size of the camera, that is all a bonus. I don't expect it to work as a full 8K cinema camera. Those cameras are big, bulky because they have a fan in it. There are not too many computers which will be handling 8K video editing, especially for wedding videographers. As a photographer, I will hate to have a built-in fan because it will add to the weight. Many of the videographers that I know still film weddings HD, 80% maybe. So with this camera, it is possible to film 4K 24p, is full frame, and it will record on the internal SD card. Not too long ago, videographers were using VHS camera. Do you remember those days? Those were heavy cameras on the shoulder, costing over $20,000 and with low VHS quality. Our customer didn't have a choice. In the next couple of years, we will be seeing movement from HD to 4K. And this camera does the job. And also, I'm sure soon there will be firmware updates which will improve the video function of this camera. Best in-body image stabilization up to 8 stops with the combination of IS lenses. 100% autofocus coverage of the whole screen with dual pixel autofocus, perfect for people photography with eye detection. High speed 20 frames per second shooting. 45 megapixel full frame sensor. Dual card slot. Touch autofocus LCD. Joystick and rear scroll wheel like the Canon 5D. Upgraded battery with higher capacity. Variable angle LCD. So Canon has given us everything we wanted. And calm down now for the bad or not so bad features of this camera. I wish there was half a resolution RAW file option in the setting. I would have liked to shoot some of the images at 20 megapixel instead of 45 megapixels. I don't like the micro HDMI connection. Canon should have stayed with the mini HDMI. I wish this camera had HD 120p video recording. Move and come on closer and get into the picture and get up. I am a big fan of mirrorless cameras and I was very patient to wait for the Canon version of the Pro mirrorless camera and I was not disappointed. Okay, let me talk about this. The iPhone. I love my iPhone, but there's no 5G. But I do understand because Apple is a company that works on something to perfect it before it releases. And when Apple releases the 5G, it's gonna be the best. And I feel the same about Canon. Like Apple, Canon did the right thing to redevelop the new RF lenses. The lens is the heart of a camera. If you have a great lens, you have a great camera. The RF lenses are some of the best and sharpest lenses I have ever used. I replaced all my EF lenses with the new RF lenses and I'm not looking back. I love Canon's new lens control ring. It's this one here, offering customizable control over aperture, shutter speed, ISO for exposure compensation. Yeah, baby. Let's have a look at some of the features of the Canon EOS R5. The EOS R5 has a good ergonomics. It is very well balanced in the end, especially with the lens. It is about the same size as the Canon EOS R. This camera has IBIS, in-body image stabilization. It is one of the best stabilizations I have seen. In combination of the RF lenses, it is possible to have up to 8 stops of stabilization. The body stabilization will function also with non-IS lenses. Dust is the biggest problem on mirrorless cameras because the lens is very close to the sensor. One of the most significant advantage of Canon EOS R cameras is the shutter curtain that covers the camera's sensor when you turn off the camera. When you change the lens, there's no dust on the sensor. There is the depth of field preview button, which also can be customized to use other functions. There is a remote control sensor at the front for using a wireless remote. There is also remote control terminal to use the Canon wired remote. On the side, we have mic and headphone terminals, USB-C and micro HDMI terminals. On the original EOS R, it was mini HDMI, which I preferred. And also there is a PC terminal for flash. The EOS R5 has the same battery as EOS R with higher capacity. You can also use the old batteries on this camera. With the firmware upgrade of the Canon EOS R, you will be able to use the new batteries on that camera. In the battery compartment, you will see the terminal for battery grip. I highly recommend the battery grip. The 3.2 inches LCD screen is the best out of all the cameras. It is perfect for shooting from different angles. I love using the mirrorless cameras away from my face so I can have more communication with the subject. I fully utilize the touch function for setting up the camera and touching the focusing points. Canon has added a joystick and EOS 5D-like quick control dial. This camera has 2 card slots, one CF Express and one SD. If you like to see my images, visit my Instagram page at Yervant.Photography. I used a grayscale focusing chart to measure the focusing, the dynamic range and noise. The chart has 22 steps grayscale with back focus chart. All the 22 steps grayscale is visual in the capture and has no problems with back focusing. Here are 3 close crop images photographed at 100 ISO, 800 ISO and 12,500 ISO. The EOS R5 being a large sensor camera, the ISO sensitivity should not be as good as small sensor cameras. But looking at the results, this camera is excellent. I used the X-Rite color checker to compare the white balance of the raw files in Lightroom. And the results were very close to the chart. The JPEGs out of the camera were a bit warm, the noise level had been reduced and a bit soft. But overall, very acceptable result for people photography. If your images are correctly exposed, the JPEG files are very much usable. Because of COVID virus, I still haven't tested the camera at a real job. But I tested the camera at home with different light settings. Yes, sir, I can boogie and the boogie woogie can boogie. I had beautiful Lexi walking and moving in a room not very bright. The face detection was on the spot and not Miss Lexi, with results nearly perfect. I used Atomos Ninja 5 to capture the screen of the Canon. Move and come on closer and get it into the picture and get up. Here are some of the results. I tested the camera with manual setting because I used 90% of the time manual. For the test, to make sure that the exposure were 100%, I used Sekonic light meter. I also tested the AV setting of the camera. The lens I used on the camera was the Canon RF24-105 f4. All the files were corrected in Lightroom. Outdoors with Lexi, soft winter day, flat light. Camera setting 50mm, ISO 400, aperture priority at f4. Exposure bias set to 1 EV. I like to overexpose my shots if I use the AV setting. Lexi at the front door entrance with 45 degrees light coming from the outside. Top light blocked. Camera setting manual. 40mm ISO 800 f4 68 of a second. Lexi indoor with daylight and 45 degrees Profoto B10 continuous white balanced LED light. The camera setting manual 50mm ISO 1250 f4 100 of a second. This is my wife's Annie's glass collection. This is indoors with daylight. Camera setting 50mm manual ISO 400 f8 and 1/8 of a second. Here is again Ricky, my son, in the foyer of our house. 45 degrees daylight coming in. Camera settings on manual. 30mm ISO 1250 f4 1/125th of a second. Ricky indoor daylight. Camera setting manual 70mm ISO 1250 f5.6 1/160th of a second. So all the tests I did were very close to what I do at an actual wedding. The Canon Eos R is the perfect camera to shoot high resolution wedding portraits, studio portraits and fashion shoot. This is a great camera, I love it. The quality as I expected and love is all Canon. Out of the camera files are some of the best I have seen. Autofocus is near perfect. This is what I want from my camera. Overall, final results are beautiful. And it is a great photography camera with some crazy video settings and advantages like 8K. I see Canon to do some firmware upgrades in the future to make this camera even better. I love this camera. I will be using this camera with the combination of EOS R and EOS R6. EOS R6 I will use for more action shots. I rate this camera 9 out of 10 using the Canon RF lenses. If you like my review, please subscribe to my channel so that I can bring more reviews in the future.